This is a Noah Allen production, as it is a compilation of home movies taken by Noah Allen during the 1930s and into the 1940s. This narration is being given on June 13th, 2003. You will note during the film that it changes back and forth from black and white to color. When the various films were put together, they were not put together in chronological order. We start out with Admiral Byrd's snow cruiser coming through Skaneateles in October 1939 on its way to Antarctica. School was let out for the purpose of having all the students observe the cruiser as it passed through. As a matter of fact, the entire village turned out. As the cruiser passes through, you will first notice standing in the doorway on one side in the front, Major Martin Dillon of the New York State Police, who was born here and was in charge of guiding the cruiser through central New York. The cruiser was traveling on Route 20, as it was at that time the only access across the state free from overhanging bridges that would have been a problem on other routes. The cruiser was important to Noah Allen as it carried Welch Allen medical instruments. Next, you will be watching the construction of the present concrete bridge in the summer of 1931 over the outlet, which replaced the iron bridge, and at the same time you will notice the trolley tracks being torn up by a big shovel. You will also observe in the park on Route 20 big round pipes, which appear to be culverts but were really pipe for the city of Syracuse's second water conduit that was being laid at the same time. The last trolley was on April 15, 1930. The first bridge was around 1807, and it was 396 feet long. The iron bridge being removed was built in 1871. The first parade you will see is in color and was on Memorial Day 1949. Beverly Straub Major is the lead drum majorette, followed by Rose McEnany O'Brien, Betty Wood Rodeck, and your narrator with a trombone in the first row. In the Legion Color Guard is John Gregory in the tan uniform on the right, and Stan Dove with the American flag. You will also observe, toward the end of the film, a football game being played on the field, which, if you were to locate it now, would be behind the bus garage on Elizabeth Street and ran up and down hill at that time. The tennis courts were in the location of the bus garage and were used for hockey in the winter. The football field area has now been leveled out, but back then, if you won the coin toss, you would like to start the game by going downhill. Disregard the football game. As you look up the hill, you will note the pasture and woodland of the Bevier Farm, which is now the location of the present high school, with the actual Bevier Farm barns and house located across East Street. As you look towards the northeast, you will see the McBay Chicken Farm, now the location of the Waterman School. Later on, you will notice the seawall construction in March of 1934 between St. James Church and Legg Hall. The stone was taken from abandoned dams and ruins along the outlet, and the work was done by the Civil Works Administration crews, a program empowered to do this work during the Depression days. When looking at the film, pay attention to the background, as it be greater interest than the actual individuals. However, you will see an interesting elderly man just following the men trying to balance on the trolley rails. He is Sam Allen, that's spelled A-L-L-E-N, former pilot of the steamship Asihinta and later worked for Welch Allyn for 16 years, making leatherette boxes for medical instruments in what most of you know as Trabow's Garage. He was also a 76-year member of the Skaneateles Fire Department. In the first golf scene, you will see a young William G. Allyn and a Waller Thorne, one of the individuals who started the Talcott Mill. As the camera pans around the village, note the background and the businesses. Remember, all the black and white was probably shot during Prohibition. You will see a scene of a young girl walking toward you during the bridge construction. But also note Western Union and Powell's Restaurant overhanging signs. This location was also the location of Hennessy's, then McLaren's, and a new place called Morris's. Next door you will see the bus station on the corner of Genesee and Jordan. Later it was a laundromat and eventually became the hitching post store. The short scene of skipjack racing boats was today's jet skis. This was a regatta held on an intercollegiate basis during the early 1930s, and the races eventually succumbed due to noise complaints. At times you will also see the original bridge market operated by Bert Hunt and Stan Dove. The market started after they returned from World War I and operated through the early 1950s. The American Legion was located at one time upstairs. A second parade in black and white is the village and the fire department's Centennial Parade in June of 1933. This is the first time the fire department wore their new uniforms. The county fire department convention was held at the same time. That's the end. Okay. We're going to be starting out here with Admiral Byrd snow cruiser in October of 1939. There's Sundial Park is passing right now. Look at the other things in the background. You'll notice Mark Dillon in the front of the snow cruiser. This was on its way to Antarctica for part of Admiral Byrd's expedition. Look at all the buildings as closely as you go by and not so much the individuals. The snow cruiser is now buried in Antarctica on 10 to 12 feet of ice. We don't know who all these individuals are, and if you have their names, we do know that that's not Harry Truman, but we don't know who it is. These are scenes along Genesee Street. Now this is the replacement of the old iron bridge in 1931, and you'll note at times here City of Syracuse conduit pipe laying in the park or on the highway. That was part of the overall project of replacing Route 20 and the iron bridge and putting in the conduit pipe all at the same time. It had to be worked out so that we didn't have any overlap in work. You can see an individual here. It appears to be same as today, pulling in one of his minnow fish traps from the outlet. Now we're up by Lakeview Cemetery looking towards downtown by Franklin Street. Note that it's still a gravel road and that there are no curbs. And there you'll see the pipe that I was talking about. The city of Syracuse is about to lay, and the shovel over in the park. Sherwood Inn on your left, and Stott's Garage. Now you're looking again at, in the background you see a railroad car, passenger car, and the passenger station is still there, and the old stone mill. Yes. There's the famous sign of purest water in the world. We don't know this individual, but that's the detour at Hannum Street. You'll shortly see Bentley Thomas Garage in the background right there. This is, they're now putting in the curbs along Genesee Street. That's George Tucker, former owner of Tucker Hardware Store and chairman of the municipal board for 34 years. This coming up is the elderly gentleman I spoke to you about, Sam Allen, A-L-L-E-N. That's Carl Wilshire, the door of his meat market. Notice the Western Union, Paul's Restaurant sign. Paul's Restaurant is the place of McLaren's and Hennessy's, and now there's a new place there called Morris's. There is the Bridge Market across the street with the overhang awnings that are not permitted today. There's your skipjack boats, were the predecessors of what we might call jet skis today. They had races over in front of the park until, for a number of years in the early 30s, until people complained of the noise. Now you're at the football field. That's Trooper Abe Ryder. Note the background up there. You see the McVeigh Chicken Farm. And up the hill you'll see on Elizabeth Street, that one White House, Stu Palmer's house, the empty fields, pasture land, and the Bevier Farm at that time with the barns and house across the street. There's the McVeigh Chicken Farm again. That is Ted Smith with a hat on looking at you. You can see Elizabeth Street. At that time the bus garage was occupied by tennis courts, as well as the tennis courts in the winter were used for a hockey rink. Here's three of our teachers who I'll identify later. This is the football field, which ran up and down hill. There's Coach Glenn Thompson, who preceded Art Hyatt. That's Ed Feely, who was a partner of Waller Thorne, ran the old stone mill, Talcott Milling Company. That's not Charles de Gaulle. But if you see anybody you can identify, let us know. Looking at, here we are at the country club. Great socks on this gentleman. It's not Gene Saracen, but you'll see young Bill Allen in a minute, who's now 95 years old, and the son of the man who took this film. The club at that time was a 9-hole course, and this is the 9th hole. You can see 1 Mile Point. There's Waller Thorne with his hand on a tree. And there's Bill Allen on the left with the knickers, a young fellow in the background. There you can see them now. Now we're going to Westlake Road, the home of Noah Allen. The tall, thin man is attorney F. Eugene Stone, friend of Noah Allen and longtime president of the library board. Still the Allen residence, Westlake Road. There's a parade in 49, John Gregory to Brown and Stan Dove carrying the flag, and Beverly Straw Major and Rose McEnany O'Brien and Betty Wood Rodak as majorettes there in the front. The band's got their new uniforms, followed by the American Legion and the Sons of the American Legion. The 3 Gregory boys in there, the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. That's Al Jennings. In a moment you'll see Sedge Smith coming across the street, but first most people believe that's Harry Dando. There's Sedge Smith. He'll be followed by Allie Hoffman, our local pharmacist. Note the cars parked diagonally. There's a wonderful resident, Newt Brown, raking leaves in front of the home of Dexter Weeks, where he worked on Westlake Road, neighbors of the Allens. That's across the street from the Allens. That's Spike Fisher and Muggs Foster cutting up a tree. In a few moments you'll see Mrs. Dexter Weeks with Newt Brown watching the progress of the work. Now here's where Noah Allen gets into the picture like Alfred Hitchcock would. He'll be in this picture himself. He's a taller gentleman with a hat coming up when they're pulling the tree over. There he is. There she glows. This is Dean Howland, who lived over in the Cove at that time, across the street from the Allens. Look at the background again, across the street on Genesee Street. The next 2 individuals are believed to be Annie Rodak and Jack Fitzgerald. This Sam Betts with a hat and cigar, and as you go over to the right, it is Cannonball Baker, the owner and editor of Skaneateles Press. See the old post office in the background. You did see McLaren's. There it is, McLaren. There's Stats Garage. You're back over in the Cove. The predecessors to the Duck Itch right there. These are believed to be Mr. Wickstrom's swans. The Methodist Church, built in 1859 by David Hall. Now we are going to jump over to the Weedsport area, Port Byron area. You see the mules walking along the trail, pulling the barge on the canal. In a moment, you're going to see one of the last passenger trains coming into town, although absent any passengers. This is coming into the station down opposite the Milford building. Behind the engine is the baggage car and then the passenger car. Baggage car, of course, used to carry baggage. Also, Railway Express. It's one way you could legally get fireworks into town in those days. And the cab was Eddie Powers. In a moment, you're going to see some other individuals who worked on the railroad. Les Murphy, the taller man will be Crab Connors, and the other one is Pat Fitzgerald. And eventually they're going to be joined by another railroad gentleman, Ed Chappell, not yet in the next sequence. And there'll be another individual well known to everybody, local barber Bill Tuck. He's the one that's dressed up and going to jump out of the way. You'll note that the train will be backing up, probably backing down to its station at the where the PNC parking lot is now located. The train could not turn around and backed all the way to the junction, and since it was uphill, it wanted to go forward with more power, so it was always faced in this direction. You'll note that the station is there, passenger station. The station was used during the Second World War for the issuance of the rationing stamps, and after the war it was torn down. Now we're back over where the trolleys are. The trolleys operated through Skaneateles for many years, first starting out from Auburn to Skaneateles only, and then eventually extended from Skaneateles to Syracuse. This is the believed to be the last trolleys through town. Again, note the other, anything you can see in the background, the stores, or the absence thereof. Now we're tearing up the trolley tracks. The Masonic Temple in the background, the side door where the thrift shop is, was the side door to the bowling alley and the pool hall. In a minute you're going to see a number of our teachers, some of which are unknown, so pay attention, and if you know their name, let us know. As Mrs. Waterman, Belle Waterman, who presently the school is named after. Florence Salisbury Payne, second grade teacher. Kate Mulroy Grant, taught French. Ike or Ethan Randall, shop and agriculture. Margaret Conway Burns, taught history. Francis Ryan Van Epps, Latin. Ruth Austin Adams, art and music. We believe this is Beatrice Ives, not sure. Doris Hicks, American and British literature. This lady, I believe her name is Pearson, but we don't know her full name. This is Coach Glenn Johnson, as I've told you, the predecessor to Art Hyatt. It's Anna Dix, first grade, and also worked at Krebs for many years. Betty Pearson Beeler, taught English. Roger Test. The next one is a lady who was around for a long time, Anna Dorland, secretary to the high school principal. That's Laura Schultz, taught math, 8th grade and 7th. That's Maisie Williams Harrington Burke, 6th grade. Unknown. That's also unknown. This is Gus Koch, general science. This is Elzina Clapp Lovelace, 4th grade and our first town historian. Josephine Snook, homemaking. Frances Finch, 9th grade English and dramatics. Mildred Ryan Mulroy, math. Mrs. Irving Smith, 5th grade. And our principal, Carl Warren. Now we'll have upcoming some basketball players. Alan Harse, Seward Wilshire, Harold Main, Jim Feeney, Bill Luddington, Harold Church, Lester Leonard, Charles Milford, Sid Lukens, and Lynn Beefy Wright. Now we have some JV players here with Coach Mears on the right, and on the extreme left will be Frankie Laperfito. Now we switch over. There's St. James Church, unknown individual. Some of these people are known, some of them aren't. There's Jack Stewart with the Skaneateles jacket on. That's Herb Williams, the dark glasses. This is a lady walking down, Mrs. John Backus, formerly Louise Speck. Various men standing on the corner. That's in front of Herb's formerly Milford Major. That's Bob Poole, local undertaker. Now we're back at the golf course. Notice the great socks on some of these individuals. Great swing. This is the third hole at that time going up along Westlake Road. Now back to the parade. This is the Centennial Parade for the village of Skaneateles and the Skaneateles Fire Department in 1933. Note the fire department only has capes and not uniforms, but it was the first time the Skaneateles Fire Department wore their brand new uniforms. It was also the County Firemen's Convention, and this celebration went on for 4 or 5 days. You'll see it float in the background coming in the parade. Now we'll eventually go back up to the country club again. This has, of course, been burnt down. Now we're back in the snow conditions downtown. Notice all the sleighs in the background of the various stores. That's Ed Krebs in front of his hardware store over in the corner of Jordan. And that's Mr. Milford Major Law Office, where Riddler's or Herb's now is. Many of these individuals walking back and forth, we have no idea who they are. Hopefully some of you people will. You notice the townhouse has 4 stories on it, what is formerly the townhouse. There's John Toby and his mules going back to his farm down on the Stump Road. This is Roz Weeks, a prominent local attorney. See the Ford garage way in the background where Johnny Angels used to be. Now we're over the Harsh Brothers grocery store and meat market, Genesee Street, with Lester Herrick. That's Jack Emperor going back to his farm at Brook Farm on Westlake Road. That's Winslow Thurlow waving his hand in front of the Savings Bank. He'd been president of the bank for many years. Back with the Harses, over in front of the Harses. Notice the overhanging signs, the hardware store of the Tuckers. The Harsh Brothers again. Jerome Murphy in the middle, the former mayor of Skaneateles and president of the National Bank. Now we're back at the construction of the seawall in 1934. That was done by tearing out dams and down in the outlet, Skaneateles Falls, Montville area. Just people walking along in front of, across the street was Johnny Angels, or back then, the Ford garage. Here we're at Skaneateles Lumber Company with Mr. Hoyt in the foreground. Now the area of the Skaneateles Town Hall. Now you're going to see Mr. Wallace, Mr. Hahn of Wallace and Hahn's Pharmacy on the middle of Genesee Street. Cecil Arthur, many of you will know him. And the people jumping in the lake. We never had the fear of anybody catching us because John Thompson couldn't swim. He was a local chief of police at the time. We don't know these individuals. In a moment you'll see a dog chase going up on the ice. They were chasing fox chases, they call them. And that is the end of this show. Hopefully you enjoyed it and will be able to identify some of these individuals and scenes for us.